In this video, I'm going to be talking about Bumrun's parenting styles. And she says that there are two dimensions to your parenting. You have the warmth aspect and you have the control aspect. So you can have high or low warmth. And the warmth scale is going to be how much you say you love your child, how much you hug them, how much you show them affection. That's the warmth scale. And again, the other one is control. So you can have high control or low control. So if you have high control, there's a lot of rules, a lot of expectations, curfews, chores, that sort of thing. Low control means you don't have any of those. And so depending on how you fall on these two spectrums, you have four parenting styles, and that affects what kind of kid you end up with. So we'll start with the good part. If you have high warmth and high control, so there's a lot of expectations, but it's because that there's a lot of love in the house. This parenting style encourages kids to be independent, but still places limits and controls on their actions. There's a lot of give and take allowed. Parents are warm, they're nurturing, but they do expect things from the child. That is going to be an authoritative parent. So an authoritative parent is one with high warmth and high control, and kids with authoritative parents tend to have lots of social competence. These kids tend to be very cheerful, they tend to be self-reliant, self-controlled, very achievement oriented. They have friendly relations with their peers, they're cooperative with adults, they cope well with stress. There are a lot of good outcomes with this parenting style. Now, if you keep that high control, but now you decrease the warmth. So there's a lot of expectations and a lot of rules, but there's not a lot of love. It's a very restrictive, punitive style where the kid has to follow directions without much else, much encouragement. There's firm limits, very little verbal exchange, not a lot of give and take. These kids are much more likely to have the rules rigidly enforced. They don't explain them. They get mad if the kid tries to talk back, much more likely to be spanked. This parenting style is authoritarian. And these authoritarian parents end up having kids with social incompetence. These kids tend to be unhappy. They tend to be fearful. They tend to be anxious when they compare themselves with others. They tend to fail to initiate activities. They'll do what they're told, but they don't really have the adventurous spirit of the authoritative parenting kids. They tend to have weak communication skills because their parents never let them communicate when deciding things. They always just did what they were told. So that is the authoritarian parent and the kind of kid that results. Next, we'll go to the absolute worst type, if there's no control and no warmth. So the kid can do whatever he or she wants, but it's because the parent just doesn't care. Parents are really uninvolved in life. The parents just really have absolutely nothing to do with their kid. That is called the neglectful parent. And the neglectful parent also tends to have kids who are socially incompetent, especially when it comes to self-control. These kids lack self-control, they lack self-esteem, they lack maturity. Oftentimes when they're adolescents, they tend to have a lot of delinquency, they tend to skip school a lot, to have a lot of truancy. They tend to be alienated from their families. It's really sort of the worst outcomes for the kids. And then finally, you have high warmth and low control. So this is the parent that just wants to be your best friend. They are your biggest cheerleader, but if the kid doesn't feel like doing it, the kid doesn't have to do it. There's not a lot of control. Parents are highly involved, but they don't place a lot of demands or control on them. And for these kids, they never learn to control their own behavior. They always expect to get their way. If they don't, they're more likely to throw a tantrum. They have difficulty with respecting others. They're often aggressive, domineering, non-compliant because they're used to getting exactly what they want. These parents that produce those types of kids are called indulgent. And just like with the other styles, these kids also have social incompetence. Again, with a big lack of self control, like the neglectful kids. So these kids with indulgent parents tend to be incompetent, have difficulty in social situations, more likely to throw tantrums if they don't get their way. The neglectful kids are more likely to have that low self-esteem and immaturity. The authoritarian kids less likely to initiate activities, and the authoritative kids are the ones that show competence, that have the best of both worlds, lots of control, but with expectations and rules. That's really the best parenting style, Baumrind would say. And we'll do an activity connected with this as well.